wake up. Chris, wake up.
What?
You got to do the podcast.
Fine. Yeah, that's fine. I was awake. That's fine.
You sure you're awake?
Yeah.
You were snoring?
Yeah.
You
No,
were
I'm fine.
Quite loudly snoring.
No.
You were talking in your sleep.
No, I wasn't.
You were?
No.
You were saying, I love cinema sins. It's my favourite thing. Well, I know that's really what you talk about in your sleep, because you dream about being in cinema sins.
It must have been a nightmare.
Hey, there we are. That's good. This is the How to Survive podcast. My name is Joe, and I'm joined by Chris. Hello.
Hello.
Good sleep metaphor there at the beginning, wasn't it? Because this week's movie is 1985's absolute barnstormer.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Directed by Jack Shoulder.
Yeah, he's the one who jacked the responsibility, taking over from Wes Craven.
He didn't shoulder the responsibility.
Well done. What you've done is see through the conceit of my joke. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Good. A strong start from you there, Joe. Well done.
if the movies we cover end in a 0, typically it means it's going to be part of a franchise.
Yes.
The current franchise is Nightmare on Elm Street, and we're on the second one.
Yeah.
If you have never listened to the How to Survive podcast before, what we tend to do is take a movie each week, discuss it at length, and then say how we would survive if we were unfortunate enough to find ourselves living in it. And that does mean that it's going to be spoiled, because we have to assess it from all angles.
Yeah, but you've had 33 years to see the film.
Yeah.
So,
Fair
crack
warning.
on crack on if you want to see it spoiler free.
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't seen it, so
No, and now we have.
Yeah.
We definitely have seen this film now.
Yes, that's the prerequisite for doing a podcast on it. It's available. We watched it on Amazon Prime, so you can find it on there. It's like £3 or something. Worth your time only if you want to appreciate this podcast in more detail.
But also, if you don't want to watch it, feel free to appreciate the podcast anyway.
Yeah.
And just listen to the podcast if you, like me, didn't care about the plot of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
That plot is coming up after this.
Someone is coming back to Elm Street. He is not friendly. He is not patient.
Kill for me.
And he is not a welcome visitor.
No! No!
But he has something terribly special for the new kid on the block.
It started to happen again.
Dad!
I'm in trouble. You've had some scary dreams, okay? Help!
Daddy can't help you now.
There's something inside him.
Fight him! You are not afraid of him. He doesn't even exist.
Freddy Krueger is back on Elm Street.
Get out of here, Lisa!
Jesse, fight him!
Watch out for him. He'll be in your neighborhood soon. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2.
You are all my children now.
Freddy's Revenge.
So, Chris, a quick recap of the plot in case you haven't watched Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge in 33 years.
Yes. I've watched it in 2 days, within the last 2 days.
Yeah. And you need a refresher anyway.
I do,
Yeah.
yes. Please, help me out.
It's an exciting time for Jesse Walsh. He's moved to a new town, which means a new school, new friends, and a new start in life. At school, Jesse begins a love-hate friendship with Grady, a jock and bully. They bond over their hatred of PE, and in particular, the PE teacher, Coach Snyder. He also begins dating a rich girl, Lisa, and everything seems to be going swimmingly.
Yeah. As for, teen films where someone joins a new school, he's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
At the sort of 10-minute mark of this film.
Yeah, like there's a conversation where he's like, I think that Grady asks him, "Hey, are you sleeping with her?" But he actually says, "Are you mounting her nightly?"
Yeah.
And then minutes later, he's like, "So you just moved here, huh?"
Yeah.
He's like, "You opened with that?"
Yeah. It's bizarre. One of a number of bizarre things about this film.
Unfortunately, Jesse is plagued by terrible dreams, which cause him to wake up screaming, and It is the most shrill scream I've ever heard in a movie.
Yeah.
Bizarre. And he's like sweating and it just looks like awful.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, the dreams become more clear, and Jesse realizes that he's being stalked through the dreams by a ghastly burned figure wearing a red and black jumper and a hat.
It's Jason Voorhees, isn't it?
Yep. The figure finally reveals himself and his intentions. He is a murderer who wants to use Jesse's physical body to carry out murder in the real world, telling him, "Kill her for me, Jesse."
You know, just like he did in the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, it's fine. In the basement of his house, Jesse finds a knife glove in the furnace. Before Jesse can begin to make sense of it all, Lisa finds a diary while helping him unpack. It turns out Jesse has moved into the house and bedroom of Nancy Thompson, the victim of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. The diary belonged to Nancy and explains that Fred Krueger is a child killer who haunts you in your dreams and is generally a quite unpleasant person.
Mm-hmm.
Just as it's all starting to make sense, Jesse dreams that he walks through the night to a gay bar where he orders a beer. At the bar, he is accosted by Coach Snyder, who takes him back to the school and makes him run laps around the gym.
Now, you say this is a dream.
We'll come to that.
Okay.
Jesse then takes a shower, and as he does, Coach Snyder is attacked in his office by sports equipment, before being dragged into the showers, tied up and whipped with a towel, and then stabbed by Freddy Krueger, who emerges from the steam.
Mm.
But when the steam settles, we just see Jesse standing there, wearing Freddy's glove. Of course, suggesting that Freddy wasn't there after all. Perhaps it was all a hallucination. Jesse is picked up walking naked through the streets by the police and brought home. Confused and overwhelmed, he shuts himself off from his parents and friends, and is terrified that evening when he feels Freddy take over his body and encourage him to kill his little sister. Meanwhile, Lisa throws a party at her parents' mansion, and all the kids in the school are there. Jesse attends, but is clearly going mad and tries to leave. Lisa stops him and tries to seduce him, but as they begin a round of heavy petting, a gigantic green tongue rolls out of Jesse's mouth. He dresses and leaves, heading to Grady's house. He asks Grady to watch over him while he sleeps, and Grady agrees, but then immediately falls asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse wakes up screaming, and his body tears away, revealing Freddy Krueger, who then murders Grady. Jesse recovers his body, as in his own body, and escapes out the window, returning to the party at Lisa's. At the party, he tries to convince Lisa that he has murdered Grady, but she doesn't believe him. She's worried about his sanity, but as she tries to calm him down, he transforms into Freddy Krueger and attacks her. Eventually, he breaks out into the pool area and begins attacking teenagers, before Lisa's father shoots at him with a shotgun, and he vanishes through a portal in the garden fence.
Yeah.
Like he did in the old film, you remember?
Yeah.
Lisa tracks Jesse/Freddy to the power plant where Fred Krueger allegedly worked. I'm sure he worked at the school. He was a janitor.
Yeah. I believe it's actually the boiler room where he took his victims as opposed to where he worked. So it's not necessarily that he... The boiler room isn't in the school.
I thought it was.
No, I think that's only in the remake.
Oh, right.
In
any case, she arrives at the power plant and is greeted by dogs with human faces.
Yeah.
And a variety of spooky dreamlike apparitions.
Yeah.
Having read in Nancy's diary that the trick to beating Freddy is not to be scared of him, Lisa tells Freddy/Jesse that she loves him before kissing Freddy on the mouth, aware that Jesse is trapped somewhere inside Freddy's body. Freddy bursts into flames, and from his burnt carcass, Jesse emerges. The next day on the school bus, everyone agrees it was a rad party, until Lisa's friend has her chest punched through by Freddy's gloved hand, and the bus drives into the desert. And that is how Freddy's revenge took place.
Yeah. Believe it
Revenge
or not.
for what, though?
Yeah. Don't.
Because
I mean,
the original film could have been called Freddy's Revenge. Because he was avenging his murder
own death
at the hands of the vigilantes.
Yeah.
But these are a completely new set of people
Mm-hmm.
who have nothing to do with the original film or the events preceding it.
Correct.
So what is he having revenge for?
I mean, it's a good question. I don't have an answer for you.
And you've seen the film.
Yeah, and I've seen the film. I mean, this film is so bewilderingly strange that, I mean, towards the last third, it's like I can only remember it like a dream.
Yeah.
Which perhaps is an unintentional but very appropriate sort of format thing.
You texted me and said, I feel like I'm making this film up as I'm watching it.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, which is how dreams feel, right?
Yeah.
You know, when dreams, just things happen in dreams, and you just, because of the state you're in psychologically in a dream, you just sort of go along with it and stuff. And in this film, I was watching it, it's like, oh, Kim goes to the boiler room, oh, dogs with human faces, that's all fine.
Yeah.
Carry on. Oh, it's like the set of aliens inside the boiler room for some reason, fine.
Yeah.
She's kissing Freddy Krueger now. Okay, that could be a thing that happens, you know.
Yeah.
It's so odd and unusual and so unlike the original film as well. I kind of enjoyed it, but I think I enjoyed it in a way that suggests that I wasn't so much with the film but laughing at it.
That's exactly right, mate.
And I think because of that I didn't really get anything out of the film.
I think I'd be lying if I said I didn't have fun watching it.
Yeah.
It was laugh out loud all the way through.
Yes.
But it's hard to say whether that is deliberate or just a result of poor production values, and I suspect almost certainly it's the latter.
I don't think it's the production values, it's just everything's wrong about it.
Yeah.
It's like the 9th film in the franchise or something. Do you know what I mean?
It is and
like,
it isn't.
It's like Jason Goes to Hell, where
There's
just
suddenly,
out
like,
of nowhere
yeah,
he's a black slug monster, right? And it's just, and you're just supposed to go along with it. That's what this film feels like, but we're only on the 2nd film of the franchise.
Kind of. I think, right, okay, I think I can explain it. Right?
Okay.
It's fairly clear, I think, there are at least 2, maybe 3 movies at play here, right?
Right.
The first is a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel where Freddy haunts just one person and tries to turn him into a serial killer.
Yeah.
Right? The second is a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel, which is completely batshit and just wants to crowbar in as much craziness as possible, like dream logic stuff.
Yeah.
And the third is like a French cinema telling of a high school student coming to terms with his sexuality, with his homosexual urges and activities represented by bloody violence.
Yeah, so that's something, the homoerotic subtext, or just the homoerotic nature of the film, it's less subtext, I think, is pretty interesting. I think you wanted to
it's
talk
one of the
about
most interesting. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that all those things, it gets a little bit right, and it makes it like a little bit interesting, because you're like, oh, right, you know, that is interesting that Freddy is using one person. It is interesting that there's dogs with human faces. It is interesting that there's a homoerotic subtext. But it gets all of them badly wrong as well. Like, it gets them more wrong than it does right.
It's you know, it's a good indication that novelty doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you're going down the right path, because often we're decrying franchises for just doing the same things over and over again, relying on the same tropes. This film just goes mad, but it goes madly off in the wrong direction entirely. I think.
All right, so I like the attempt to tell an original story, right?
Yeah.
I have to say that is something that's to be respected, right? Think of like Friday the 13th and how much we absolutely hated every single sequel, because fundamentally they're the same formula in different location. It's like, oh, here's Jason attacking everyone in New York. Here's Jason attacking everyone at a cottage. Here's Jason, right? This is a work of pure originality compared to that.
Yeah.
Right? And I was expecting it to be like, oh, Freddy's now going to scare a set of teenagers using dreams attacks, which are going to be more wacky and more gory, and more teenagers are going to die, like horror sequelitis sort of thing. But that isn't quite the case, right? I don't think you can argue with the suggestion that Freddy Krueger manipulating one teenager into killing for him is a smart approach.
Yeah.
Because it shows that Freddy has learned from his earlier mistakes.
Yeah.
And is trying something new. And it means that we don't necessarily know what's going to happen next.
Sure.
But of course that falls down because the only way the characters can navigate the movie is by learning the plot of the first movie, which we already know.
And the other thing is that I feel like the central premise means that Freddy barely appears in the film. For most of it, he's, you know, a sort of potential psychological threat. And the glee in the first one is, or the joy in watching the first one is when he's, you know, running down the alleyways with his arms stretching out and stuff. And there's nothing like that in this film. No. It's all just, even the scenes where he appears fully formed, like the just bonkers pool party sequence, he's just, it might as well be Jason Voorhees.
Right.
Because it doesn't feel like
just a man with a knife.
Right. He doesn't have any of the tropes, or like it doesn't have any of the sort of elements that made Freddy Krueger so interesting in the first instance.
I think what you're trying to hit on, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Freddy Krueger in the original was surreal. The moments you're describing, they were the most surreal moments, which are most dreamlike, right?
Yeah.
So the most iconic moments, like the alleyway scene, like the tongue in the bath, or the tongue in the phone, or the hand reaching up out the bath, they weren't necessarily moments of like terror. They were moments where you were like, "What the fuck?" Right?
Yeah.
And it's creepy and it's weird more than it is like spooky.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to things like the human faces, or like the dream logic in the gay bar, or like the tongue scene when he's trying to make out his girlfriend, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They're quite arresting imagery. Like we're seeing the person's subconscious come to life in those moments, like a dream. But then there's just some complete madness in it. Like the opening scene where Freddy's driving the bus.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even mention that in the intro. There's a whole, like, 5-minute scene where Freddy's driving a bus and it goes out into the desert, which then breaks away, and he's, like, on a pile of
He's
rocks.
left teetering on a pile of rocks. The bus is left teetering on a pile of rocks,
Yeah.
Italian Job style.
Yeah.
And Freddy is advancing down the bus towards Jessie and 2 other girls.
Is that Jessie?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Right, okay.
But I thought that was quite a strong opening because it does that sort of crazy stuff that you would expect from the first film, but the rest of the film falls away in comparison.
Think of other things like the budgie scene.
Yeah,
what is that?
That's very bizarre. Basically, the family budgie goes homicidal and then flies around and explodes.
Yeah, basically that's the scene.
Yeah.
The pool attack. Like
yeah.
the
there are some interesting things that there's a bunch of different moments where I was like, oh, this could be good. So for example, when the water in the swimming pool just starts boiling, that's like crazy and fun,
but then everyone just gets out.
Yeah. And then they all just sort of line up and Freddy threatens them, kills one of them. Oh, all the deaths are rubbish as well. Yeah. That's what you want in a slash movie, is the interesting creative deaths, and you had that in Nightmare on Elm Street because of the format and because of Freddy. Whereas in this film it's just like a man slashes someone, a man stabs someone. It's very pedestrian in the way that everyone gets killed.
I agree. I mean, all those scenes, including the bedroom dancing scene. What the fuck is that about? Right?
Yeah, but
nothing happens in any of those scenes. The thing, like the opening, the budgie, the pool attack, and the bedroom dance scene.
But the bedroom dance scene, I think, is separate from that, because the rest of those scenes are essentially supposedly horror scenes, whereas the bedroom dancing scene is, as you put it, a scene from the French teen drama about a boy discovering his homosexuality.
Right.
So,
but the thing is with those though, with all they total up to being maybe like a third of the film.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in it.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I can't argue with that. And the thing that struck me is just, though it's colourful and good fun, it's just so goofy. And it's to the point where it's just not at all scary. And it's fun to watch an old school slasher movie every once in a while. But this feels like a parody of a slasher movie because that campy tone is dialed right up in a way that's not to the benefit of the film. And you know, it's just total rubbish. Basically, it's not scary whatsoever. It's not particularly funny in what I imagine is the way that they intended, and it does nothing with the material that's been, and nothing that they do with the material rather that they've been given holds any worth or is
any artistic value.
There's no value added to Nightmare on Elm Street by this film.
No, and there's probably a reason we haven't seen it before. Yeah, you know what I mean, no one's talking about it.
Yeah. So
one other thing, Chris. I mean, the tension is palpable. It's been underlying this podcast for a while. Yeah. The discussion about homoeroticism in Nightmare on Elm Street 2. There are moments in the film where I think its true intentions bleed through, and I think they reveal a much more interesting movie.
Okay.
Right? You have a male character who seems to relish wrestling with another male character, dreams or actually does go to a gay bar and gets off, or maybe gets off with his PE teacher. He begins making out with his girlfriend, but is unable to get into it and runs off to find solace with his friend who has leather sheets, and asks him to watch over him while he sleeps.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take his like channeling of Freddy Krueger as a manifestation of his homosexuality,
Yeah.
it lends quite an interesting reading to that scene in particular, because let's suppose he is overcome by sexual desire.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the parents thumping on the door and demanding to know what's going on takes on a different meaning, right?
Yeah.
It's also interesting that he only attacks and kills men.
Right.
No women get attacked in the movie.
Okay.
So if that is the case, if it
Apart
is,
from the female lead,
she doesn't get hurt.
Lisa, she gets slashed across the face by Freddy, doesn't she, in her living room? I think.
I don't think so.
I think she gets a flesh wound of some kind.
All right. No one gets
No
killed.
one gets killed.
Yeah, right. But with that reading, right, the
Mhm.
ending is rather odd because it seems to suggest that heterosexual love or heterosexual love from a heterosexual person will cause your homosexual desires to burn away.
Right.
Right. And it's quite arresting cinematography in that scene because everyone's lit in a really interesting way, and Jesse breaks out of this burnt out cocoon.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure the message there is particularly progressive.
No, but then the reveal at the end of the film is that he hasn't escaped it at all, which again is not to view it as something that needs to be escaped.
Right?
Yeah, it is bad. I think it's a very interesting sort of angle to look at the film from, especially given that the screenwriter himself said that it's definitely what he intended.
Yeah, exactly.
And Joe, whatever his name is, Jack Shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe that's not like a Tom Cruise character.
Yeah.
Jack Shoulder didn't know, and the screenwriter never told him.
Yeah, but the lead actor is gay.
Right. And he, I think, he has said himself that a lot of the sort of camper flourishes to his character, for example, the dancing and the scream, were to some extent informed by the script and the screenwriter, and to some extent informed by his own improvisation, which would presumably come from a sort of personality, his own personality.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely, it's not subtextual, is it? It's textual.
No, of course, yeah. I mean, it is subtextual because on the one hand, you've got the reason that question is it subtextual or is it textual is because it's so unclear what Freddy's motive would be in wanting to kill the PE teacher.
Right.
There's no benefit to that at all.
But it's not so much whether he kills the PE teacher almost, is it? It's the method by which he is.
Yeah.
So the PE teacher, because I don't think we've made this clear yet, the PE teacher and Jesse are alone in the school at night, and the PE teacher is making Jesse shower, which has its own sort of
strange,
uncomfortable parallels to Freddy Krueger's behaviour himself in some ways, I suppose. At that point, phantom skipping ropes.
This is after all the balls in the room,
right? So
tennis balls.
He gets pounded by balls.
Yeah.
And then ropes tie his wrists and drag the PE teacher to the shower, where he's sort of trussed up,
stripped naked,
and then stripped naked, and then whipped repeatedly on the backside by a towel, including, shots of his arse. Mm-hmm. This is all while Jesse's in the shower, and we're, by the direction the film takes, we're to understand that Jesse and Freddy are the same agent within this world, even if their motivations are different. So I think it's pretty obvious that this is taking the stance that this is somehow a sort of visual metaphor for
a sexual experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but through horrible violence.
Yeah, but then the horrible violence is almost secondary. Yeah, you could have him just tied up, and then Jesse slashes him. But for some reason, there's a whole part of the scene dedicated to his backside being whipped, which is not torturous in the way that we'd expect from Freddy. It's more humiliating in a sort of BDSM, homoerotic way.
And the what does that mean for the tennis balls though?
The only thing that I can think is
pounded by balls.
Yeah. I mean, how else can you read that within the sort of homoerotic reading of the film?
Yeah, balls flying around everywhere.
Balls flying at a character until he's unable to cope with them.
It's kind of like Call Me by Your Name, crossed with Raw, crossed with Nightmare on Elm Street. But
that's
the
like-
execution isn't there at all. Do you know what I mean?
But that's so it's so generous.
I
to
know,
this
yeah,
film.
yeah. Imagine in Call Me by Your Name if I can't remember, not Armie Hammer, the other one.
Timothy Chalamet's character.
Right, exactly. Imagine he, instead of being like
Ezio, isn't it?
Elio, yeah.
Elio.
Instead of embracing his sexuality
Yeah.
or coming to terms with it, if he'd been like taking out his frustration about the situation in violence, that would kind of be like Raw, right? If he was like eating people, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the story
That
of...
is the burgeoning of her sexuality.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, like I say, the execution simply is lacking.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see what Wes Craven would do with the same subtextual things. Something tells me that his politics don't align with the idea of having a,
sexual awakening.
specifically a homoerotic sexual awakening.
Yeah.
That's just an assumption that I have based off his works, but
Yeah.
I may be wrong.
He's got quite a strange view on sex. That it has to be violent and revenge has to follow.
Yeah, and I think it just reflects on the whole, on the film as a whole, in that it would have benefited from a much steadier hand.
Yeah.
At the reins,
Or just like someone who had a vision.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think there's the movie that the screenwriter wanted, there's the movie that the director wanted, and there's the movie the studio wanted.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
And those three just don't work at all.
No.
Well, here we are. We're bedded in for another 9 after this.
Yeah, I mean, just one last point before we move on, which is just to say that Kim Myers plays Lisa, who is the female love interest.
Yeah.
And she looks so astonishingly like Meryl Streep that I had to Google it to confirm that it wasn't her, because it is the resemblance is uncanny.
In the IMDb trivia, it says, I think unfairly, that the only reason she was cast is because
I thought it said the part of the reason that she was cast.
Sure, it said the only one, because I was like, what? The only reason?
Well,
she auditioned.
if you look at the films that she's done since, it's barely anything aside from a Hellraiser sequel as well.
Right.
So it's quite a strange thing, but I've heard that she was cast at least in part due to her likeness to Meryl Streep.
But why?
Just because Meryl Streep was in her mid-30s, and she was probably... they probably went... What would be good is, a strong, independently minded female character. Sort of Meryl Streep type. And the casting director was like...
Right, no,
okay.
Got it. So, what's going to happen next?
Well, the next film's called Dream Warriors.
Right. I quite like the sound of that.
Yeah,
it sounds a bit like Warriors, and I like Warriors.
Okay. I think, I may be wrong, but I believe that this is aside from the original, the highest rated sequel, Dream Warriors.
So is it that they, like a team of people get together and go into their dreams to find Jason?
That's what I assume.
To find Freddy.
That's what I assume, and that's what I hope.
Yeah, that would
because
be good.
That sounds stupid and a lot of fun.
Yeah, but also like I need a decent, like we need to deal with this guy. Let's all get together and get him.
Yeah, and it also gives them a nice canvas to go mad with all the dream stuff, right? If they're all in a dream world.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see.
Yeah, I have a nasty feeling that we're going to be returning to a group of teenagers, all scared, picked off one by one in their dreams by Freddy.
Maybe.
Fairly shortly. So, what do we know about Freddy after 2 movies? So we know that he's a quick learner.
Mm-hmm.
He's not repeating the same actions.
Yeah.
He seems to want to kill for killing's sake, not just for revenge, despite the name of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because despite that, like, he does want revenge, but
on whom and for what reason we don't know.
No, exactly. Except the people in the first film, right? Where it made sense. He wanted to avenge his own death, and now he seems to be avenging his own failure to avenge his own death.
Yeah. Let's go with yeah.
And he also seems to be obsessed with one specific bedroom in one specific house on one specific street.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know.
Just don't live in that house. Is one quick tip.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole sort of side note about how the house had been on the market for 5 years, etc.
Yeah.
Which is all just sort of pedestrian.
Yeah,
crap, isn't it?
the whole family, every scene with the family, and it's just like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, awful.
Yeah.
With that said, if it came to it, and you
Mm.
were on Elm Street on any given night, sleeping perhaps,
Yeah.
and you happened to come across a little man I like to call Freddy Krueger,
Mm.
what would you do to survive?
Well, I think despite the character differences that we outlined a minute ago, the similarities mean that most of the things that we were saying last time still apply. So that's ways of keeping yourself awake chemically and inducing dreamless sleep and all that sort of thing.
I think those are going to be standards through the whole franchise.
Correct, yeah. The thing is with this film is that I think I was so bewildered by it that I just don't have any ideas how you'd survive. Because the people who die in it as well is basically just Freddy cuts them with a razor.
Yeah, he jumps out of a bush and stabs them.
Yeah, so it's difficult to say this person could have done something different because most of them just die in a sort of arbitrarily quick and violent manner. Like, what are you going to do if you're the gym teacher and you're taken by possessed ropes?
No, mate, you were maybe being a bit naive.
Right. Okay.
There's lots of failures of systems.
All right.
the
Well,
way,
please educate me.
So let's say, I mean, it's all Jesse, isn't it? Really, Jesse's he does survive, does he? It's the same ending as before.
Yeah. No more clear on what happened at the end of the previous film either.
But are we still in a dream?
I mean, yeah. Who knows? I don't know.
Don't care.
Yeah.
But there's systems in place to keep children safe, and he is a child. Let's not forget, he's a teenager at school.
Correct.
The first step is always going to be parents,
Mm-hmm.
and there is rife bad parenting in this movie. So if my child woke up, my 15, 16-year-old child woke up screaming, I mean, I'm going to drop it in.
The house down.
It's appalling. It's like, oh my god, you think someone's been killed, and then the little girl's like, oh, what's wrong with Jesse? Oh, no, nothing. It's a bad dream. How do you know that? Does this happen before? Does he do that every day? And he cuts to him, and he'd wake up, and he's just like soaked in sweat. He sweat through the mattress.
The thing is, as well, though, that even if it is just a bad dream, if you're having persistent, screaming, terrifying, they're night terrors rather than just nightmares, aren't they?
Yeah.
Or a bad dream. A bad dream makes it sound like you have forgotten your keys in a dream or something.
Right.
I had a bad dream last night. I had to give a presentation. I didn't have anything prepared.
My wife had a dream the other day, which she told me about, which I think counts as a bad dream.
Right.
We had a pet turtle called Tortu.
Right.
And it got killed by one of our cats.
Okay.
She was trying to put it back together, which is a bad dream.
Tortu sounds like turtle in a sort of indigenous language.
I think it's French.
Right, okay.
Now,
very cultured of you.
Yeah, you might not be. But I mean, that is a bad dream.
Yeah.
But it's not like, if she'd woken up screaming and sweating.
Yeah, and had done so repeatedly.
Yeah.
Eventually you'd be suggesting that she see a psychiatrist or a mental health professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Visit to a hospital.
And we'll from now on we'll keep the cat away from Tortu.
Yeah. Or take a visit to the sleep clinic.
The sleep clinic, yeah.
Which is adjacent to... is it Springfield they live in?
Springwood?
Springwood, yeah. It's obviously adjacent to Springwood.
Anyway. Then when he gets brought in after walking around the streets naked in the dead of night, rather than being like, what happened? They're just like, I'm going to ask you one question. What are you taking? Yeah. And it's like, well...
I think that's supposed to be that sort of, Ferris Bueller type clueless parent type thing, isn't it? Which is sort of quite amusing, I think. But yeah,
it is and it isn't. Because it's like,
well, it is. Yeah, it's not amusing in the sense that they're not doing anything to try and help their child. Yeah.
I mean, it's useful for me because I get to come up with some survival tips, which is don't be such a shit parent. Take an interest in your child.
Yeah, it's helicopter parenting. I always think of helicopter parenting as being you fly in and out every so often, but actually helicopter parenting is where you like hover over them, So it's whatever the opposite of helicopter parenting is.
Absentee parenting.
Yeah. Remote parenting.
Yeah. Similar to the parents being a failure.
Mhm.
Next stop might be the system, the government.
Right.
Bad policing.
Okay.
So they find a man murdered, right?
Yeah.
Tied up, trussed up, slashed to death.
Yeah.
Nearby, they find a young boy walking naked, and they're like, they're unrelated,
Probably, yeah.
nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. Even though he goes to that school and is in his class and has been punished repeatedly by people in front of multiple witnesses.
Humiliatingly.
Yeah, exactly. And they would have had dozens of witnesses to the same boy walking into a gay fetish nightclub earlier that. In fact, it's not a gay fetish. It's not a gay club, is it? Well, there's heterosexual couples there, so it's more of like a leather bar,
Right.
leather bar. Yeah, and a young child walked in there in a state of undress.
Yeah, in his pajamas.
Yeah, and then was taken by the murder victim. I mean, this is rudimentary detective work. One might say that there's an institutional disinterest in investigating homophobic hate crimes, which I would argue is exactly what this is, given that he was trussed up, stripped,
whipped
on the rear end before he was killed. I would say that fits the pattern of a hate crime motivated murder, and the police are just doing nothing, Joe.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing.
They did have like waterproof, like hair. You know when you get in the shower and you put
shower cap.
They had a shower cap for their little police hats.
Okay, well, that's good.
That was quite nice.
Yeah, to keep the rain off.
Yeah. So they won't get a head cold. But the man who was murdered minutes ago.
Yeah. Fine.
Yeah. Bad policing. Don't know how it would have, prevented people from dying from Freddy Krueger. Well, you lock him in a cell, he can't kill anyone.
Yeah. What, Freddy Krueger?
No.
Jesse.
Yeah, but Jesse and
by
thereby
extension.
Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
My third point is, well, do you recall the layout of his bedroom?
Yes, and I know exactly what you're going to say because I had the same thought. And anyone who hasn't seen the film and is just listening to this podcast, you should check it out online, because his bed is at a 45-degree angle to the corner of his room.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense. Is the only thing it serves to do is to make his bedroom look absolutely like a set.
Yeah.
And like a theatrical set rather than a movie set. It doesn't look lived in, because no sane person would ever have their bed like that.
So, just to confirm, it's not jutting out over the wall. It's more like jutting out of the corner.
Yeah, so the head of the bed is
straddling two walls.
Yeah, it's the 45-degree point of a 90-degree corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible use of space.
It's dreadful, yeah. And he's got a sort of bedside table which is sort of sticking awkwardly out because it's supposed to be, furniture is designed to fit in
nooks.
Yeah, and to fit, perpendicular and parallel walls and room layouts.
That's why we have square things and not jagged things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's gone for something. Maybe it's a teenage thing. He's trying to break the norm, as lots of people want to do when they're that age.
So, I got a feeling that this could be bad feng shui. I don't know a lot about feng shui.
Okay.
So I Googled it, and I found a website called My Waking Path.
Okay.
Which is written by Katrina Marie.
Yeah.
She says, I was born different from my siblings. I had special gifts which were difficult for my family to understand and accept. I knew things before they would happen. I have memories of lives I've never lived in my lifetime. I got sick after touching people who were sick, but later
Freddy
that
Krueger
person would be well.
Me in my dreams.
Yeah, I mean, this person sounds to be trusted.
She does sound like a protagonist of a film that we've watched.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, she's got a post on her site about feng shui, about affecting, saving yourself from bad dreams with feng shui.
Yeah.
And I know, like I say, I know nothing about feng shui. So I'm just going to take this as gospel. Mm-hmm. I'm listening to the expert, whose name is, just to confirm, Katrina Marie.
Okay.
So when you're having bad dreams, Chris, you might try inverting your pillow.
Right.
Sometimes there are nightmares that seem to continue even after waking up for a few minutes. As soon as you go back to sleep.
Sorry, can I just stop you? Inverting your pillow, does that mean rotating it 90 degrees? Does that mean spinning it
Like I say, I'm not an expert.
to the other
I'm
side?
not the
Or does that
expert.
mean turning it inside out? Because that could mean any of those things.
We'll read on this, see if she gives us any tips. When this happens, invert the pillow you have under your head. When the energy causing the bad dream is not that strong, this method helps. Also, you may try transferring your head position to the foot part of the bed. This method is quite stronger than the pillow inverting method. I think it's just flipping the pillow.
Can you imagine waking up in the middle of the night and you look over it and your wife's feet are next to you? And what's going on? And she's going, I was just having the turtle dream again. So I thought I'd swap ends to see if it got rid of the bad energy, the bad turtle energy.
I did, when the heat wave over summer,
Right.
I did get in bed and just like, I slept upside down then because I was like, this might help. This
Trick your body into doing inverted temperatures.
Yeah.
And then it was far too cold. You were minus 39 degrees.
The second suggestion is to change the bed's position.
Right.
And Katrina says, I noticed in some houses I lived in, there were some portions in the bedroom that when I positioned my bed there, nightmares would keep happening. And that is almost certainly what happened in Elm Street.
Right.
At the worst, sleep paralysis occurs. As soon as morning comes, I would immediately rearrange the room and find another spot for my bed. And just like that, no more nightmares.
Okay. Right.
Next tip is, seems fairly straightforward to me. Organites and pyramids is the heading.
No, I think this is a talking point from Hellraiser
Right.
that you've accidentally brought up.
Living in haunted houses is like tea to my cup.
What?
Seeing spooky entities in my bedroom was usually the icing to my cake since childhood.
Well, hang on, is it the tea to a cup or the icing to a cake?
Both.
Right. Okay.
It's a versatile thing to add.
That is messy as a metaphor in more than one way.
As if it was not enough for them to scare me enough in my waking state, they'd even haunt my dreams. But having pyramids and organites around can be very helpful in shielding my space from lower energies and EMF that disrupt sleep. I don't know what EMF is.
Electromagnetic frequency of a brain or something?
You can search the net for these devices. They come in extremely handy. And I didn't notice any organites or pyramids in Jesse's bedroom. There's a tip here to keep salt or regular rock salt.
Okay, where? Or just keep it?
I'm not going to read it.
Don't throw it away.
You may use a glass and fill it half with salt. Position the glass under your bed or at the side table. Imagine that. Imagine, like you said, if you wake up and your wife's upside down in bed. Imagine like she's like, oh, I've got a glass of salt.
Watch the salt. Yeah. Honey, why have you rearranged the bedroom? Don't ask questions and don't step on my salt.
Keep your space clean.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed that most dysfunctional and problematic people have a dirty and dark room decorated with posters depicting negative images? Imagine that. Clutter, dirt and darkness are the breeding grounds for negative entities. Now, fair point. I mean, he hasn't unpacked at the beginning of the film, which is when Freddy's attacks start. So
Right.
he's living in a cluttered space.
So you think, but by the time he's decluttered, it's too late?
It's too late.
Right.
No salt has been put down.
Yeah.
Final tip from Katrina
Mm-hmm.
is to speak to the soul.
Okay.
Sometimes recurrent and traumatic dreams are replays your soul goes through when you're asleep. You can handle this by first placing yourself in a calm state before you sleep. Simple enough.
Yeah.
Call on your godhead and guardians to assist you. Then begin speaking to your soul. Tell it that you have a recurrent dream. Tell it that if that recurrent dream is from another lifetime, it should no longer be afraid of it. Tell your soul to realize that traumatic event to the source of light and love. Also, say that you are living in a different lifetime and that event will not happen again in the present. Send healing to that fearful or torturing event and wrap it in a bubble of love and visualize that you are personally surrendering it to your godhead. Then expect the miracle. Now, I don't know why Jesse didn't do that early on.
Yes, perfectly simple. Sacrifice your past life nightmare to the godhead, please. So straightforward.
Do you ever have a bad dream?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah.
Do you call on your godhead and guardians to assist you with it?
Not knowingly. Perhaps I should start mindfully doing that in the
Yeah.
future. Before I rearrange my bedroom, turn myself upside down, pour salt all over my pillow that is inverted.
Yeah, and don't forget the Organites and pyramids as
Yes, of course. How could I?
well. Thanks to Katrina for not sending that in, but for having a level of intrigue into the world of feng shui that I will probably never understand. Thank you, though. Thank you indeed. We just had a few emails, Chris. Do you remember? Because last week was Apostle, and at the end we hadn't planned out the movie that's going to follow from Nightmare on Elm Street, so next week's movie. Yeah. And we put out a challenge. So the first person to get in touch with a film suggestion is the one we're going to do.
Yeah.
And the switchboards lit up. And it was just this morning. It just happens that we're recording the same day.
Yeah. What time is the podcast released?
Midnight normally.
Right.
Unless I haven't edited it by that time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So most people are asleep. Most of our listeners are asleep, which is good because they probably have good sleeping habits.
Oh yeah, lots of
Their
salt.
Organites and pyramids are correctly aligned the right way up.
Yeah.
They have adequate salt in their room.
So we had a few in that didn't quite get in time.
Yeah, didn't quite beat the buzzer.
Yeah. One is from Simon Todd, who emailed last week, and we haven't recorded since then.
Right.
So he's just getting that in early. His movie suggestion is Shoot to Kill, directed by Roger Spottiswoode.
Okay.
Which, according to Wiki, has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay. I've never heard of it.
Which he says is a slightly dodgy film from his childhood. So there you go.
Okay.
I don't know what he means by dodgy.
Is that just like a film that he's made himself?
Called Shoot to Kill.
Yeah.
1 rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 100%. No, I don't know. This is an interesting suggestion, but unfortunately, Simon, you were both before the buzzer and after it.
Right.
Because you were not on time. Another suggestion came from Mark, who's a long-time listener.
Yeah.
A day oneer. Who just emailed Watership Down.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a good suggestion. We haven't done animated season ever, and I think we should pencil that in at some point soon.
Yeah.
Because it's quite an interesting one. Watership Down is a traumatic film.
Yeah.
From what I understand.
It's interesting that, like, you say animation season, and the one we go for is one about rabbits from 1976, rather than like.
But I think it's known for being harrowing and unpleasant and violent.
I think there's a survival element to it as well. Another email from Gemma, who says, "Hello, chums. I thought I'd try and counter your horrendous suggestion of doing whatever is suggested, and give you some good movies as options.
Okay.
A Tale of Two Sisters. Do you know that?
No,
I don't know it. Blade Runner. Not a bad suggestion at all. Bram Stoker's Dracula. And she suggests The Last Crusade, which is... we've done Raiders of the Lost Ark in the past.
Yeah, we need to do Temple of Doom first, really, don't we? Get them all in order.
Yep. Apologies if you have done all these, but my fruit-based device has not fed me them.
Right. Okay, yeah. Well, Raiders of the Lost Ark is one to check out. I think that's one of our best episodes.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, because we actually went through, found the Nazis, plundered the treasure.
That's right, yeah. Joe did a choose your own adventure.
Right, that was right. Yeah, that was good. So
but,
those are all the losers, the stinking losers who shouldn't
winner,
have been bothered.
The winner, who got his message in at 6:56 a.m. So that's how dedicated. I mean, I don't know what time Callum is getting up.
Yeah, 6:56 a.m.
Yeah. And he said, Starship Troopers created a Twitter account just for this.
Wow.
You've made your bed, now lay in it. So thank you, Callum. It's your suggestion that was the winner. Yours was the earliest suggestion. So next week is indeed Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Which you've never seen, which I could not believe.
Why can't you believe
Because it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, you're a big fan of like Mars Attacks, for example.
Yeah.
It's the sort of or Brain Dead. It's the sort of film that I would have assumed you'd watched on VHS in the late 90s, early 2000s.
No.
And not only can it be enjoyed as a sort of splattery alien, shoot 'em up fest.
Yeah.
The film's actually been sort of reappraised in recent years for its sort of political overtones as well, because it's I would say also about the rise of fascism.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting. Paul Verhoeven is the guy who directed it, by the way, from 1997. Starship Troopers coming next week. So thank you again, Callum, for that. The only other suggestion we had was actually from a few days ago, and it was from Joseph in the US, who says there's a new movie on Netflix. It's called Seven in Heaven. It's produced by Blumhouse. You know, the company that produced your favourite movies, Insidious and Sinister. Enjoy. So, Seven in Heaven will have to be added to the list, I think.
Right. So it goes. Interesting that Callum said he had to set up a Twitter account.
Yes.
So we do have an email address, which is HowToSurviveShow@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And it's not just used for suggesting movies on a 1-minute turnaround like Callum did. We've had some other emails too. This is from Alex, who says, love the Final Destination marathon. Next time I do a marathon watching all 6 Wrong Turn movies. A real mixed bag. It has some of the best horror ever and some of the worst. Love the podcast. Keep it up, from Alex. What do you think of that?
Well, I think there are other films that are other franchises that are higher on the list to do marathons of, and also other things that are higher on my to-do list than doing another marathon. Certainly at the moment.
Yeah, we'll get to it one day.
Yeah, one fine day.
And another email here from Maria, which is an interesting bit of feedback, I think.
Okay.
She says that she loves the pod, a long-time fan, and she says the first thing she does when she watches a horror movie is look to see if we've covered it. Which is charming. Thank you.
Yeah.
She's the only thing that's a bit off-putting is when we sometimes say things like, probably people that didn't like this movie are just casual moviegoers and not film fans like us. And she goes on to explain, why that might be offensive, which is fair. I think, it does sound arrogant and to put it that way.
Yeah. I what I would say is that. While that's a fair criticism, I don't think that's quite what we're getting at when we say that, because I think that is in relation to films such as, I think she emailed in reference to Hold the Dark.
Right, exactly.
So in that, when we were talking about the it not perhaps appealing to a broad audience, your average moviegoer, I don't think we're suggesting that that's a disparaging term. We're not using that as a disparaging thing. But rather it's that a film like Hold the Dark requires so much sort of outside thought to maybe get to what the director was trying to achieve, that perhaps that's a failure of the film. Because ideally, I think a film there shouldn't be a bar for entry for films necessarily.
No, of course, yeah.
And so with something like Hold the Dark, I feel... Or we discussed it, and I think generally the consensus was that your average moviegoer, the person who's not going to committedly look through obscure internet blogs to find deeper meaning, is going to be frustrated with this film just because the way it presents its themes is so oblique. And that's a criticism of the film and not of the
audience,
the theoretical audience.
Yeah, fair enough.
But that's a good bit of feedback, and we appreciate it.
But Maria says she's a little bit because she loves cinema and she's not superficial in anything she does, and still happens to dislike the 2 movies that she references. The 2 movies she references, which are Annihilation and Hold the Dark, where we did have those kind of discussions.
Yeah.
And she says that those things can and do go. You can dislike a movie and also have an appreciation for it.
Of course, yeah. And we wouldn't suggest otherwise. We're not just saying that anyone who you have to be smart to enjoy certain films, and we're not suggesting that if you don't like certain films you're dumb.
No.
I think they're separate things. Like, you can enjoy a film, I mean, you can smartly enjoy dumb films, and you can dumbly enjoy smart films in theory, but it's just whether or not the film it's not even necessarily a criticism in general of films, but it's saying that I think It's more just analysing whether or not a film is likely to be successful in conveying its themes without making someone do all that extra legwork.
Yeah, I think the point perhaps that Marie's making is we made a specific point and said that it was a failure of the audience who might watch Hold the Dark and not appreciate what's gone into it.
Right.
Which isn't necessarily true, of course.
Yeah, I don't remember that explicitly being our point, but if that's how it came across, then that I apologise, and we wouldn't want to feel like we're trying to exclude anyone from anything, really.
Like we're not experts. You know what I mean?
No, and also it just so happens that we're into stupid, oblique, nerdy, dense films. But that's not necessarily there's nothing elitist in that. It's just a certain thing that we enjoy. Yeah. There are plenty of types of films that I don't enjoy.
Yeah, and like I said in the Apostle episode, I think if this sounds pretentious, do bear in mind that we host a film podcast, so we are sort of pretentious.
If something that we're saying sounds pretentious, it's probably because it is pretentious.
Yeah, but we don't. It's not intentional. I'm not trying to alienate anyone.
No, of course not. Yeah. So thank you very much for your email.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. And read more on my blog, youarenotSmartEnoughToFollowThisMovie.properly.com.
Yeah, very good.
So, with all that said, do join us next week for Starship Troopers.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks, Callum, for recommending it.
Mm-hmm.
Do get in touch with any thoughts you've got. HowToSurviveShow@gmail.com. And maybe also get ready for the next few movies coming up, which are Suspiria.
Mm-hmm.
The original and the remake.
Yeah.
And rounding off ballet season with Black Swan.
Pirouetting out of ballet season.
Exactly.
It's Black Swan.
Black Swan.
So thank you very much for listening. And until next time,